Welcome to the Explainer. So right now, without even thinking about it, you're wearing clothes. You put them on this morning exactly the same way you do every single day, right? Just completely automatically, without a second thought. It's a routine so deeply ingrained, it's honestly like breathing or blinking. We're so used to it that it doesn't even register as a specific behavior anymore. But when we actually stop and look at this totally automatic morning routine through the lens of deep history, we uncover a completely fascinating mystery. Now, what's truly staggering here is the sheer scale of this number, 8 million. Of the roughly 8 million species currently living on this planet, only one does this. Literally only one single animal on Earth decided at some point in its deep evolutionary history to deliberately cover its own body. Just think about the everyday anomaly of that. Out of millions and millions of creatures, we are completely alone in doing this. And that presents us with a massive mystery. Why are we the only ones wearing clothes? Now, I know exactly what you're thinking. The obvious answer, the one we were all taught in school, is that we put on clothes to stay warm. Makes total sense, right? But what if I told you that simple explanation is about to be completely unraveled? The real reason is actually far more interesting than just basic temperature control. Okay, let's dive into this. The entire assumption that clothing was invented purely for protection from the cold just doesn't hold up to geographic reality. See, early humans lived in sub-Saharan Africa for the first 100,000 years of our existence. We're talking about one of the most sweltering, blisteringly hot environments on the entire planet. And somewhere in that intense heat, long before human beings ever even saw a snowflake or experienced an ice age that would require heavy insulation, we started wearing things. The climate contradiction here is absolutely glaring. Moving on to Section 1, the microscopic clues, the LICE evidence. So, because ancient fabric rots away over millennia and leaves absolutely no physical trace behind, geneticist Mark Stoneking had to look for a much stranger and frankly much itchier clue: lice. Let's walk through his brilliant chain of logic from a 2003 Max Planck Institute study, because it really makes you feel like a detective solving a prehistoric cold case. Step 1. Human body lice are a completely separate species from head lice, and they've actually evolved to live exclusively in clothing, not on human skin. Step 2. By tracing the genetic split between the two species, scientists discover that body lice diverged from head lice exactly 170,000 years ago. Step 3. The only way a new species of louse could evolve to live exclusively in clothing is if that clothing existed long enough to create a stable new habitat. Therefore, humans were already wearing clothes 170,000 years ago, right in the sweltering heat of Africa. Next up is Section 2, the archaeological proof, the Moroccan cave. For hard physical evidence, we turn to a monumental discovery unearthed by Ekaterina Hewlett in 2021 at Contrebandier's Cave. And this brilliantly illustrates the point. When examining 120,000-year-old carnivore bones from this cave in Morocco, researchers found cut marks. But notice the categorization of these marks. They weren't on the ribs or the meaty areas, which would obviously indicate butchering for food consumption. Instead, the cuts were concentrated exclusively around the paws, the skull, and the edges of the pelt. These cut marks are entirely the wrong places for eating meat, but they are exactly where you would cut if you were deliberately and carefully processing an animal's skin to wear it. Which brings us right back to our central cognitive dissonance. We have undeniable proof of 120,000-year-old pelts being meticulously processed in a climate that absolutely did not need them. I really want you to consider this for a second. Why were early humans taking such deliberate, time-consuming care to skin wolves and foxes in a blisteringly hot environment where a heavy fur pelt would just be incredibly uncomfortable? Let's map this out across our entire evolutionary journey. Now, some researchers theorize that maybe humans wore these pelts to protect against UV sun radiation. But early humans actually lost their thick body hair about 1.2 million years ago. If sun protection was the primary goal, we would have needed it way back then. The fact that complex, deliberate pelt removal didn't happen until over a million years later, 120,000 years ago in Morocco, makes the simple sun protection theory highly suspicious. After all, sun protection definitely doesn't require a carefully tailored wolf skin. Let's look at Section 3, the cognitive leap, a social identity. And here is where we hit the massive plot twist of this explainer. The very first clothing wasn't functional. It was actually highly communicative. Archaeologist Ian Gilligan's research helps us understand this perfectly.
Think about what clothing actually does in practice. It signals your social status, it identifies your group belonging, it projects your personal identity before you even speak a single word. And remarkably, it's used by literally every documented culture on Earth. Not one single human culture treats clothing purely as a practical tool for survival. Early humans had developed a deep sense of self, and they suddenly possessed a psychological need to signal to the wider group exactly who they were and where they belonged. So the crucial point is that wearing clothing requires a major psychological milestone known as theory of mind. It's the cognitive ability to model what another person sees when they look at you, understanding that you exist as an object in someone else's perception. To put on a pelt, not for warmth but for appearance, proves that these early humans understood they were being seen. They knew they were being perceived, and they actively wanted to control what that looked like.
This level of self-awareness is an incredibly rare cognitive skill in the animal kingdom. The only species capable of passing the mirror test, meaning they actually recognize themselves as a self rather than just seeing a stranger, are the great apes, elephants, dolphins, and corvids. Which means, yes, a raven actually has a better sense of self-awareness than your dog. Early humans weren't just covering up. They were using clothing to actively participate in this advanced self-awareness. It was a massive cognitive leap.
Moving to Section 4, the modern connection, design and technique. Let's move along and see how this builds, because once humans made this cognitive leap, it rapidly accelerated our behavior as we migrated out of Africa and across the entire planet. By 40,000 years ago in Siberia, we find delicate bone needles, proving humans were shifting from draped pelts to fitted, tailored garments designed specifically for the body. And even more amazing, 26,000 years ago in the Czech Republic, at a site called Delný Věstonice, humans were enduring the brutal ice age in shelters made of mammoth bones. Yet, archaeologists found impressions of finely woven textiles pressed right into fired clay there. Even while surviving a literal ice age, human beings prioritized intentional design, deliberate technique, and aesthetic beauty. They weren't just thinking about survival anymore, they were thinking about how they looked.
Which brings us right back to you. Every single piece of clothing ever made, from a carefully cut wolf pelt in a hot Moroccan cave to whatever outfit you chose to put on today, stems from the exact same evolutionary impulse. When you got dressed this morning, you weren't just putting on fabric to stay warm. You were participating in a 170,000-year-old human tradition. You told the world something about yourself before it even had a chance to ask. And the next time you look in the mirror before leaving the house, I hope you remember the ancient, incredible cognitive leap staring right back at you. Which leaves just one question for us to ponder. What exactly is your outfit saying about you right now?